Hello and welcome to another edition of Community Forum. My name is Joseph Feaster and I am the host of the program. And before I talk about the program that we're going to have today, I wanted to convey condolences to the family of Gary LaPierre, who passed away suddenly earlier in the week. Gary, as you know, has been a person who's made announcements on Community Forum and is a well-known person within the media world. So we want to extend our condolences on behalf of those of us here at SMAC for his contributions not only to us but also to the media world in general, and we convey that to his family. Today's show is a very interesting one because it has some personal connections to me. Most of us as young kids, we've had an opportunity to put our faces and our fingers up against windows looking at the different animals that might be there, holding onto the bars, maybe holding onto our parents' hands possibly. And what I am talking about is anyone who has had an opportunity to visit a zoo. I grew up in New York and my family took me to the Bronx Zoo. When I arrived here in Massachusetts, I had an opportunity to visit Franklin Zoo and Stone Zoo. And today, my guest for today is a person who many of you know here in Stoughton because he serves on so many things, particularly as a town meeting representative, but he also is the executive director of the zoos in New England, I believe is the title, and that is John Linehan. So I want to introduce you to some of you, the person who runs the zoo, but is also our friend and neighbor, John Linehan. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad to have you. I mean, as I said at the top of the program, that it's something that most of us as children had an opportunity to experience, but there are certainly those who have not.
That's right.
So first and foremost, I'd like people to know about something about the guests, because you're not just only John Linehan, who is a Stoughton resident, town meeting representative, director of the Zoo New England. You're more than that. So can you just tell us a little bit about you, background, family, and things of that nature?
I've been in Stoughton for a long time now. I grew up in Canton, but became a true blue black knight. And I have 4 children that were all raised in Stoughton schools, and all are off successfully. One's in grad school, but the rest are all very gainfully employed as engineers, teachers, and one down at Disney. And my wife's a teacher here in Stoughton at the middle school. And we've just been really true blue Stoughton citizens, very involved with the town. I myself grew up loving animals, and frankly, I used to go to Franklin Park Zoo and Stone Zoo when I was a kid, and it kind of turned me off to zoos. I didn't like zoos. I loved the animals, but the zoos, you weren't around then, but back in that era, Franklin Park in particular was kind of a...
So you're making an assumption. I was around.
It was an old, animals were literally behind bars and
Right.
small cells, and so I eventually, because of my love of animals, went to school for wildlife management up at the University of Maine, but had no dreams whatsoever of working in a zoo. I was going to work in the wild. And just by happenstance, somebody offered me a temporary job at the zoo, and I said, I'll take it while I'm looking for the job in the wild, and I got hooked from there. And I came into the business during a real time of change, a time when zoos were taking a turn from just being a place to go gawk at animals and throw them some peanuts to places that really focused on education and really focused on conservation and science. So I came in right at the right time, and I got to help really push our zoos along that path. And
well, let me just, again, you listed a lot of the topical areas that I do, maybe not in the same order that I would have liked to present them, but I do want to come back to the one where you mentioned that you were turned off by zoos.
Yes.
And oftentimes the conversation is that zoos aren't good because it's taking animals out of the wild and they're containing them, and that's not their natural habitat or their ways. Can you talk a little bit about that and maybe how you have tried to address that under your leadership here and maybe across the country in terms of across the world?
Very good
with
point.
Zoos generally.
And the reality, Joe, is that not all zoos are good zoos, and some still are places that are cruel, places that particularly a lot of third world zoos just don't have the standards we have. But the zoos have evolved dramatically, and animal care and animal well-being are topmost in our priorities, have been for a long time at our zoos. And at other zoos, we have an accreditation process called, through an organization called the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, which is really rigorous. You know, we get inspected by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They just come in unannounced and say, drop everything, we're going through all your animals and everything. But the AZA accreditation is much more rigorous. The USDA licenses like 2,800 exhibitors of animals in the country, and of that, only 230 are accredited by AZA. So it's a very high bar. And those animals in our programs, we manage them collaboratively. These animals aren't coming out of the wild. At Franklin Park and Stone Zoos, we probably have, I can think of 3 or 4 animals that came out of the wild. They were all rescues. So we had orphan bear cubs that were going to die. They were about to be euthanized. We have a mountain lion that was orphaned out in Idaho. But all the other animals are born in captivity, and they're the end result of generations of captivity in which we're really carefully preserving the genetic diversity of all these species. At the same time, we're working on improving the quality of their life all the time. Frankly, they live a much easier, perhaps not as challenging a life as the animals in the wild, but with a very high level of life satisfaction. The keepers work every day with them in what's called environmental enrichment, introducing new and novel things to them every day. Toys, treats, music, smells. You should see what tigers do with a good cologne. They just go nuts. But we also use things like if the zebras have peed on the hay, we put some of that out in the predators' exhibits, and they just love it. And then they're looking for their prey, and good luck to the squirrel or bird that lands in their exhibit, because they will catch them. But so they haven't lost their wild instincts, but they do work well with the staff, and in fact they create very close relationships. And one of the things we're doing these days is called Operant Conditioning. The staff works using positive reinforcement training to facilitate all the health care we do. And I think we've got a video of a hippo that's getting ultrasounds, and that hippo has been trained through this ongoing, it takes months and months, but very voluntarily complies with what we're asking it to do, so we can do ultrasounds as babies develop without using any anesthesia.
Well, why don't we ask that they bring up that video or picture of that hippo. Okay, can you describe what that is?
Yeah, that's early in the pregnancy, so it's really hard to pick it out. You have to be a kind of a vet to be able to really interpret it. This is Cleopatra, and she's pregnant right now, but we've been doing ultrasounds on her every 2 weeks. So you see them feeding, and she's standing still for the ultrasounds. And we do this with so many animals. We're doing cardiac ultrasounds on gorillas. Heart disease is the biggest killer of gorillas, even though they're vegetarians. And one of the great programs we brought in recently, we've developed, is actually something called One Health, where my head vet and other associate vets are working with fourth-year medical students at Harvard University Medical School, and they're working together for a month at a time, and these people are just taking it to the next level. They're bringing together human health, veterinary medicine, and environmental health to open, and we got a front page story in the New York Times on it.
Well, let me just step back for a moment, because can you talk about, from a historical standpoint, what brought about the creation or development of zoos?
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's, you want to talk about it globally, you want to talk about it within the United States?
Well, I think you really have to talk globally to
Okay.
start with, because
Fine.
the Chinese, the Romans, there were independent beginnings. They didn't all follow one line, but it's all based in this innate fascination people have with wild animals, with animals in general. And so those early days, they were often for royalty only. And it was a status symbol to have tigers in China, and then to bring in exotic animals. You know, people would trade those exotic animals as great gifts to other leaders and exchange them from different parts of the world. Eventually, a lot of zoos for common people started developing.
Can I just draw possibly a religious connection, because that was true? Animals were used as gifts and sacrifices and all different things. So animals seemingly have played a very important part
in human culture.
That's correct.
Absolutely. And as you look at human culture across the world, I mean, going all the way back to the cave paintings, that relationship between people and animals is intertwined. And, you know, both from a respect standpoint, but from a fascination standpoint. I just see people all the time that just have an incredible fascination with these animals. And the animals we've got, you know, bringing it up to modern times, the animals we've got right now have got incredible quality of care, but they're also ambassadors for their wild cousins. We're doing lots and lots of work, field conservation work, everywhere from Asia to Africa to right in our own backyards. We do have another video clip of some of our local work. One of our departments is called Grassroots Wildlife Conservation, and we're saving local in eastern Massachusetts box turtles and Blanding's turtles and wood turtles. We did a reintroduction last year with marbled salamanders in the Middlesex Fells. They disappeared from northeastern Massachusetts 80 years ago, and now we're bringing them back. And the beautiful thing is we're involving school kids in that program. So we have classrooms of kids through Grassroots Wildlife Conservation who are raising these animals. We call it head starting.
Well, why don't we do this as you explain it? Why don't we bring up that video?
I'm Brian Wynn-Miller, and I'm Director of Conservation at Zoo New England. We're here in Concord, Massachusetts at Great Meadows National Wildlife Refuge. We try and do our conservation work in a way that gets as many people involved as possible. We're in a really public place, so one of the things we do, and it's very much a part of our work, is we know we're kind of ambassadors for wildlife conservation. Constantly when we're out, dressed like this, and we've got our radio gear out, you know, people are asking us what we're doing. It's an opportunity to tell them about Blanding's turtles, about the other rare animals and plants that live here. We take lots of people out with us doing field work. And then, most importantly, we have about 3,000 school kids a year who work with us directly. By getting kids, especially outdoors, to see some of the really cool birds and turtles and snakes and plants that live here, they are much more likely to care about those things in the future. And I think that's phenomenally important, because we are now, as we all know, we're on the brink of a potential crisis in biodiversity in the world, and yet we have the power to do something about it.
So that the kids can raise them all through the school year, and then when you reach May and June, the kids do a field trip and actually release those animals back out into the wild. And it's something that changes the kids' lives. It's something that gives them hands-on experience in preventing the extinction of a species, and it's something they never forget, and we hope it.
Now we have some videos on the turtle. Is it turtle day?
Turtle dog.
Turtle dog training.
That's a new thing we're doing.
Yeah.
So if we can bring that up, that's to help us do this conservation work, because finding these turtles is very difficult.
Okay.
But we're training a dog to help us.
My name is Christine Bartos. I'm Assistant Curator up here at Hooves and Horns at Zoo New England. I've been training Coda, our turtle detection dog, for about 5 to 6 months now. Coda's job will be to go out in the field with Zoo New England's Grassroots Wildlife Conservation Group, and she goes out with the researchers. They have turtles that have radio trackers on them to help them find these turtles, which are becoming threatened in some of the areas in New England. But even though they have radio trackers on them, they can narrow down the spot, but they're very hard to find. They hide under bushes and under grasses, and that's where Coda comes in. We started out training Coda by just pairing the scent of the turtles with a reward. So we started out by using soiled bedding just from the turtles' enclosure when the keepers were cleaning the turtles, and put it in a container. And as soon as she smelled it, we told her what a wonderful dog she was and gave her treats. Well, once we started getting her used to the fact that that scent meant a reward, then we just started hiding the containers. We'd put it out in the grass somewhere, let her search, and it didn't take her very long to figure out that if I look for this, the faster I find it, the faster I get my treats. So next step in her training was to use a real turtle shell. She's done an exceptional job. It's amazing to watch her work because she's picking up on the scent very quickly. And now we've started actually hiding the shell. So we hide it either under leaves or up in the bushes, which is more typical of what she would have to do out in the field. Being able to use a dog in conservation really expands the limits of what we can do.
So it's, John used to be a Stoughton resident,
Yeah.
but he's out there. He's one of our field technicians now, doing field conservation and getting young people involved in it.
So what's fascinating to me as we explore and have the discussion about this, John, we talked about the fact that from a historical perspective, the integration, the relationship between animals and people. We talked about how zoos were created and their importance globally, and again, as we move into the United States. We talked about specific things about how you engage people in that from your staff and for conservation,
Yes.
for care and maintenance of the animals. We talked about, and I will probably want to talk about, you mentioned it briefly, how you're looking at a more humane way in which to do it, which initially what you saw and perceived about zoos, you were turned off, and
Yeah.
then you decided to become the person to effectuate that type of change. What I'd like to do is to talk about, if you can do a little bit more about how you make the acquisitions.
Oh, sure.
And how you, if one was interested in working at a zoo, what is the type of background and experience that they would need to have?
Both great questions. Making the acquisitions, and that's part of your overall, with all the animals in your population at your zoo, you call that the collection. And so we develop a collection plan. Actually, after I leave this meeting, we're going back to work on it again. But what we do is, through that AZA, the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, we have major databases of where each animal is and what each animal's lineage is. They're called stud books. And so we know that globally in many cases now, all the animals in captivity and sometimes their relationships to the animals in the wild. And when we do the rare instances where we do need to do reintroductions, we know which animals are the best candidates to go back in. But it's something where we actually develop for many species a master plan of all these animals. They all have numbers, and we know who they are and what their background is, where they should go, who they should be paired with. And so they develop a master plan annually or every 2 years for all of the Grevy zebras or all of the African lions. And they tell us, all right, you have to move that male you've got, number 1442, over to San Diego Zoo to be paired with female number 1676, because they're going to be a great pair that will genetically help us preserve this species for generations to come.
Wow.
So it's very, very elaborate, very technical. And at the same time, there are others that happen by happenstance. We have 2 tigers at Franklin Park Zoo. We rescued them. They were in a confiscation by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and we provided them a home so that they wouldn't be euthanized, and those bears and the cougars. So some happen by happenstance. They're rescues. They're something we have to react to. If we've got a good space for that animal, we're happy to take it. But those animals that come in that way don't actually end up being part of the breeding plans, because we don't know their genetic heritage.
You know what I would want to do before I go into the staffing piece? I want to
Yeah.
just jump back in it, because as you speak, it just things emanate from that,
different.
and so we'll just do it, in terms of as it rolls,
Okay.
as opposed to formalistically, because and the way I'd like to do it is, let's talk about, first and foremost, let's talk about your specific babies, and that is Franklin Park and Stone Zoo. Those are the ones you manage.
Yes.
So if you can talk about those, location and otherwise,
Absolutely.
what its geographic area is, how many acres or whatever, tell us all of those types of details. And then we'll talk about the exhibits and programs. And then I know we have a slides of numerous animals, photos.
Yes.
And I would just like folks just to see what's in your collection.
Get a little
to get a feel.
sampling.
So if you could do that,
Sure.
talk about the 2 zoos you run,
Sure.
and then the exhibits and programs, and then we'll show a few pictures, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So Zoo New England, that's what I'm president of, is a nonprofit that manages the Franklin Park Zoo, which is in Dorchester, and the Stone Zoo, which is up in Stoneham, Massachusetts. It's just named after a guy named Stone, so it's coincidental. But Franklin Park Zoo is really our big mothership. It's 72 acres within Franklin Park, which is 525 acres. So it's a beautiful spot, and it's an
Franklin
old
Park
zoo.
designed by Olmsted.
That's right. Along with the entire emerald necklace, but
Yes.
Franklin Park was the jewel of that necklace, and so it is really, Frederick Law Olmsted is the father of landscape architecture, and that was one of his most prideful moments, was the way that park came out. So it's a beautiful park, a beautiful zoo within a beautiful park, and we've got a very diverse collection. It is a lot of walking. We do have different things, wheelchairs for people, strollers if they need it, but we've got a great new children's zoo at Franklin Park that we opened about 2 years ago. It's called Nature's Neighborhoods, and the idea behind it is particularly geared towards urban kids to get them to understand that animals as well as people live in a community. And to be a healthy community, it really needs to be biologically diverse, just like a human community. You know, you need diversity in a human community, and people do different jobs and perform different roles, but that's what makes a community strong, just like an ecological community. And that's what we want the kids to sort of take away subliminally from this, is animals don't live in a vacuum. Each one's beautiful in its own way, but they all rely on each other. And so we have red pandas, and we have a beautiful walk-through aviary, and really active prairie dogs, where all of it's created to make it a very interactive experience. Kids climb the bamboo like a panda. They go into the tunnels like a prairie dog. They go through they actually are immersed within the aviary. The birds can fly around them. And there's you can go up in an eagle's nest. You climb up into it, and there's binoculars, so you're seeing like an eagle from the nest, and then you can take a fun slide out. So it's a little twirly slide to get out of the eagle's nest, but it's all made to be fun and interactive, but really interactive learning. And so then we go on from there, and we've got a really great butterfly exhibit. That's only seasonal, but it's really great. If you get a chance to go in through there between June and August, it's a great experience. And we did fairy houses out there, and really it's called Butterfly Hollow, and you go through and it just takes you away from the rest of the zoo. And then we've got kangaroos, and in fact we have a young joey that recently came out of the pouch. You know, baby kangaroo is a joey, and it recently left its mother's pouch. They're in there for a long time.
I love that name, of course.
Yes. And then we have Birds World, which is this beautiful old historic building. It dates back to 1912, almost as old as the zoo itself. And it's very ornate in an Asian theme, and it's got indoor exhibits of different habitats, and swamp and desert and riverbank. And so it's a really different kind of experience. And then you go to sort of our jewel, which is our tropical forest building, which is a giant dome of sorts where gorillas and pygmy hippos and ring-tailed lemurs and ocelots and on and on. We've got monkeys. We have a picture of a baby monkey. We have some pictures of gorillas in there.
And we're going to go through all of those, and I just want to say on a personal note, I have visited the zoo on a few occasions. In fact, when I was president of the NAACP in Boston, I had a reception at, I call it the birdhouse for lack of a better, I don't know the time, I think you called it
Birds World.
Yes, many years ago. And just recently took my grandson there within the past year and visited most of those exhibits. It is a fun time.
It is.
It is a great time in which to do that.
We did dinosaurs last summer.
Oh, okay.
Animatronic life-size dinosaurs. This summer we've got giant bugs coming in.
Oh.
It's traveling exhibits, but these bugs are going to be animatronic again. They're going to move, and it really learned something.
Well, talk about the programs, and I also know that you are a good community organization in the sense that organizations have events at the zoo and can utilize the zoo or rent buildings at the zoo.
That's
Let's
right.
talk about all of that, because I want folks to know that this can be a place where you can have a, like I said, I had a reception there,
that's right.
which was a great time.
The zoo is a really dynamic place, and we have events all the time. We just had Chinese New Year, so we're trying to bring all the cultures together, but also you can rent parts of the zoo for free, not for free, for events. And so Birds World, particularly the tropical forest, many organizations hold fundraisers, and we have big walks and things like that take place for the kidney walk that take place in the zoo. Most of them stay within the zoo. Some come through. The half marathon runs through the zoo. And so the zoo is a great place for events. We have weddings, we have corporate outings, we have lots and lots of birthday parties. Overnights, people love the overnights. One thing that's sold out consistently now is what we call our Sloth Breakfast. People love sloths for some reason. And we have these Sloth Breakfasts. We just sold out. We just had 1,200 people call us in one day when we advertised sloth. We had to double the number of breakfasts we were doing. So we do breakfasts with different animals. People love the gorillas. That's always the top-ranked thing at Franklin Park Zoo.
Well, you know, my most famous one is, again, the name that I like,
That's
Joe
right.
the gorilla.
Coincidentally, again, Little Joe, we call him. Little Joe was the famous escapee from Franklin Park, and he's still with us today. He's bigger than he was then. But he's an incredible animal, and really he's an example of the end result of the good care we're giving them. He's bigger, he's stronger, he's more athletic, and he's more self-confident. He's more intelligent. And I think that's what led to his escape back then. He was at an age where young gorillas often do leave their natal group and go off and explore the world. But Joe's a great animal.
He almost took the bus. He almost took I think it's the 42 or the 28.
That's right.
I think it's the 28.
28,
yeah, so I think he almost took the 28.
Joe he's the most handsome gorilla you'll ever see to begin with, but he's really tall and really athletic still. But he's typical of a silverback gorilla, a gentle leader. Strength, but really gentle. He doesn't, use it unless necessary, and he doesn't need to use it. There aren't any predators around in the zoo. I mean, that's certainly something that our captive collection, those animals in our care don't have to worry about predators, and nor do they have to worry about sickness. They get dental care. They get full-time veterinary care. They get perfectly balanced diets, going back to what we talked about earlier. But it's not a bad life. We challenge them every day too.
Well, why don't we do this? I think this would be a good point at which to just run through a number of photographs and let people see what you do have in the collections at both the zoos, Franklin Park and Stone Zoo.
And they are different.
If we could just run through them, and you can...
That's Kamaya. He's one of our brothers, the male lions, and he's in with Denari. I'm sure you can see, there's Denari with the darker mane. That's how you can remember the difference. So they're a couple of brothers that just love each other and came to us from the Dallas Zoo. And took them a while to acclimate to our winters. But actually, in their exhibit, we have a heated rock. And so they can go out year-round. We also leave the door open if they want to go back in. There they are together, and they really are inseparable. They just love each other. And they're big. They're both over 400 pounds. That's a bush dog. That's at Stone Zoo. And we just opened a new exhibit at Stone Zoo. And the bush dogs are, you're going to see, had some pups this year. And we have some video if we get to sneak it in. This is a new exhibit we opened last year at Stone Zoo, which is called Caribbean Coast. And you go into the aviary with the flamingos, very interactive. We're training them to eat out of people's hands right now. They aren't quite there yet, but also in there we mix in other species like ibis and macaws and a very endangered Jamaican iguana. So we have a pair of them. That's the view from the eagle's nest that I talked about earlier in our children's zoo. That's at Franklin Park, and a little girl getting an eagle-eyes view of our prairie dog exhibit. This is a Gibbon, and we have a Gibbon family. This is the mother Gibbon, just had a baby recently.
Okay.
And she has her last offspring in with her as well. So the dad actually is a great animal for helping us teach kids with disabilities how to adapt, because he had lost an arm. And Gibbons swing through the trees with the grace of better than Tarzan.
As they say, with the greatest of ease.
Yes, but he does it with one arm. This is one of our giraffes. This is Amari, who was born at the zoo and had to be hand reared. And so talking about those breeding programs, we actually brought Amari in, a male, all the way from the Santa Barbara Zoo in California, based on his genetic lineage. So they're both young still. There he is. They won't be able to have offspring for at least 2 years. They have a 15-month gestation period too.
Okay.
So it takes them a long time. But the two of them are a little young to actually make babies yet. But that's the ultimate goal. There's one of our young female gorillas and holding a piece of bamboo. We've had a very prolific breeding program for gorillas at Franklin Park. And you're going to see next, I think, Little Joe. That's the famous Little Joe. Tell me he's not the most handsome gorilla you ever saw.
All right.
He's full of himself.
How old is he?
He's now 24.
Oh, wow.
Joe, we just had his birthday. We have his birthday party coming up, February school vacation. He'll be 25.
Okay.
And Joe is just an incredible, he's got those piercing eyes. Look at him, he looks right through you. This is some of our ambassador animals. This is a blue-tongued skink from Australia. And this is kids learning about it in a very hands-on way. And, you know, rather than being grossed out by a skink that has a thick body and short little legs, this is a kid developing a fascination and an appreciation for the world we live in and the incredible biodiversity we share and we need to protect. This is our red panda who just had cub this summer, and that was the cub before. This is a nest box camera, so this is before the cub even came out of the box in with his mom. And now they're out on exhibit together and doing great. But red pandas are another endangered species. This is the first for us, a DeBraza monkey at Franklin Park Zoo, and it's in with its parents right now, and just an exciting development. The red pandas are really endangered. These guys are threatened, so they're not quite as endangered as the red pandas. This was another really important birth we had this year. These are our snow leopard cubs. And these are two sisters that were born at Stone Zoo, and they make for a great winter visit. So don't not go to the zoo because it's winter. These guys are out there clowning around. If we get a chance, we'll show some video of them playing on the snow and the ice. They love this weather. This is a Nala, a female tiger that we rescued that we had talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. So she was the cutest little cub you ever saw back then, and they were being sold illegally, as I said. She grows into a full-size 350-pound tiger. Wow. And not an animal that should be a pet. So she's in with Luther, a white tiger, and he was rescued at the same time. This is a Nala again, and with the bamboo in the background, but
so pretty. I mean,
beautiful.
In terms of
she is a beautiful
absolutely
animal.
Stunning. As I said with myself, going to the zoo and you're plastered up against the glass, and it's almost like that commercial on TV with the little girl in the tiger outfit
that's right.
that wants to go. It's the same type of thing. That tiger is so beautiful.
So these are a couple of our zoo teens, teen ambassadors. These young people get an incredible experience, and they represent the zoo externally as well as internally with people, but they learn about being a zookeeper, about all the other science-based objectives of the zoo, and they go out and represent the zoo. And these young people end up being so self-confident, so successful in life. We have incredible youth programs, everything from summer programs to year-round programs to programs for younger kids. This year we're adding in, we have a great internship, animal care internship program already, but some kids couldn't do it because their families didn't have enough money. If they were in college, they had to work to make money to continue in college. So we've got some scholarships this year from State Street Bank that we're going to be able to give some young people so they can continue learning when college is out and develop those professional skills they need to join this whole profession that we work in.
Well, John, what I want to do now, I want to go to some of our sponsors. When we come back, I'd like you to talk about, because off air, off camera, we talked about some funding programs you have, ways in which people can afford to go to the zoo. I want to talk about how are the zoos funded? Where do you get your money from? What more can people do? And then, of course, I always want to know, we'll end the program with you making the types of requests that you have, both from an operational side, from an educational side, all the things that you would like the community to do to assist you in carrying out the job that you do. So for the moment,
thank you.
We're going to go to our sponsors and we'll be right back.
Hi, it's Gary LaPierre, and the crew wants to thank Maxie's Delicatessen. That's at 117 Sharon Street in Stoughton. They're 781-341-1662. American Cancer Society, yes, they're looking for volunteers. Drive cancer patients to and from their treatments. 1-800-ACS-6662, or just go to www.cancer.org. Ilsa Mark's Food Pantry in St. Anthony's Free Market, 2 Park Avenue in Stoughton. For more information, call Christine Gallagher. That's at 781-341-0611 or 781-341-0549. Meals on Wheels. Just ask for Jessica. You'll find her at 781-344-8882, extension 2. Stoughton Penny Saver. Our business is advertising your business, they tell us. 27 Rose Glen Street, Stoughton, 781-344-4833. Community Forum showtimes in Stoughton. It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at 6 p.m., Monday at 8 p.m., Tuesday at 5 p.m. It's on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 28. All comments and suggestions welcome. Contact us at communityforum1@yahoo.com. Samaritans, they're at 41 West Street on the 4th floor in Boston, 02111. Their phone number is 617-536-2460, 24-hour helplines for Samaritans, and the number is 877-870-HOPE. That's 877-870-4673. Samaritans, you can find them at 800-252-TEEN. That's 252-8336. Or find them online at SamaritansHope.org.
As I mentioned at the top of the program, one of our announcers who has done great work with us, is well known within the media community, Gary LaPierre, passed away earlier this week. And we extend our condolences on behalf of SMAC to his family and to his family and friends. Stoughton Lions Club's annual golf tournament is coming up. It's being held at the Cedar Hill Golf Course on Park Street here in Stoughton on Saturday, May 18th. And if you're interested, contact Walter Parsley. The phone number there is 781-408-1248, or you can contact him at the email address that's listed there. Monday Night Bingo at Ava Torah Congregation on Central Street here in Stoughton. The doors open at 4:30. The game starts at 6:30. Go out, spend a little money, support a good cause, win some money, and have fun. Get Fresh, Stoughton's own cooking program, is new episodes are airing now on Comcast Channel 9, Verizon Channel 28. And the program Get Fresh airs on Mondays at 5:30 p.m., Wednesdays at 8 o'clock p.m., Thursdays at 9 a.m., and Fridays at 5 o'clock p.m. Well, we are back, and as I was saying earlier, if you're just tuning in, my guest today is John Linehan, who is the Executive Director of Zoo New England, which consists of Franklin Park Zoo in Dorchester and the Stone Zoo in Stoneham. We've been talking about a number of things. We've talked about the exhibits. We talked about the history of zoos. We talked about how John got into being a zoo director. I talked about my own experiences having attended zoos, and what I failed to mention at that point in time, not only did I see the zoos in Bronx, New York, and Franklin Park and Stone Zoo, but even as I traveled to other cities, I've been to the San Diego Zoo, I've been to the zoo in New Orleans. So again, I, like many kids, still a kid, and like to go around and visit the various animals and exhibits as I go across the country. We talked about the various exhibits that we had that are there and the programs that are offered. show some clips of some of the collection that they have there, and one of the more infamous persons or animals at the zoo, Joe the gorilla, who started to take a ride on the 28 bus on Seaver Street in Boston. And we talked about the whole concept of being humane. Even though the animals are in captivity, they are treated well, both in terms of their health, their diets, their care, when they are bearing babies, etc. So we've covered a number of issues, and if you haven't tuned in for the entire program, I recommend that you go back. You'll get definitely a great zoo history, a zoo program. John is just a great guy in terms of explaining that. But John, what I'd like to have you talk about right now, I want to get down to the business of operating a zoo.
Yes.
It all sounds great. You have the collection, you have the certifications, you have the locations, but you need money.
That's right.
In order to do this, because without you, these animals would not be cared for properly and may be in places whereby they are not treated well, as you have mentioned here. So let's talk about your funding, where you get it from, but also what your funding needs. What's your operational budget for these, for both of these zoos?
Well, you're absolutely right that, in the end, it has to be a successful business, and it has to have diverse revenue streams. And, our revenue streams over the years have been evolving. When I started at the zoo, we were 100% reliant on the state government for our funding. And that changed, and in '92, as I say, they created a nonprofit, Zoo New England, to manage the zoos for the state. They still own the two zoos. But ever since then, it's been a very different situation. So it's $20 to get into Franklin Park Zoo right now. It's not cheap, not expensive by some standards, but most people would consider, if you've got a family, that gets expensive. That's for adults, but it's less for kids, but it's almost as much at Stone Zoo. So we've created programs so that if we want everybody to get to the zoo and to be able to get in there and not have their financial situation be a barrier. So we have, if you go to the library, you can get a pass and you can get in there, I think, for $7. But if you're on an EBT card, you can use an EBT card to get in there and pay $4 and bring 3 people and hopefully kids with you. I mean, to me, that's the most important thing, is we have this unique resource there that is not only fun, but it's a learning environment. And we want to make sure no kids miss out on that. We have free days, we have half-price days. We make sure that people can get in there no matter what their financial situation. At the same time, we support many other nonprofits. We give them passes and things to auction off and their fundraisers. They hold fundraisers, as we talked about earlier, at the zoo, and usually they're very successful. So the zoo is a business. We have to come up with not only admissions, we have members. So if you buy a zoo membership, you're good for a year to visit either zoo as much as you want, as often as you want, and that's the beauty of repeat visitation with our memberships. And membership has been going through the roof. We're 25% ahead of where we were last year. I think we have over 18,000 member families now, and growing. And it's just been a very successful business. But we're still relying on some state funding, as is nearly every other zoo in the U.S., including San Diego Zoo and the Bronx Zoo. All of us are what we call public-private partnerships, because you really just can't generate sufficient revenue for all the expenses, very high fixed costs in running a zoo.
What is the annual budget, if you don't
The
mind
annual budget is
mentioning?
about $16 million a year, inclusive of both zoos. So that includes everything from the facilities, the utilities, the conservation work we do, the education work we do, obviously the animal care work we do. And so it's a very diverse budget, but that's what it all adds up to. And of that, it's probably about 40% that comes from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We raise the rest through admissions, through donations. I think we've seen people becoming increasingly generous with us. We also have to raise money to build new things. So as we're building the new exhibits you got to see, we have to raise money. We have to raise $7 million for that children's zoo and $4 million for that Caribbean coast. So we need people to be generous. And for the most part, they're getting more and more generous.
Let's talk about that, because I want this to be the opportunity as
you.
well for you to speak about what your needs are. So how would one go about either doing that? One, getting the memberships. Two, if they want to contribute now, or if they want to do it by way of request. I'm sure you would be willing to accept requests as well. Let's talk about the ways in which one might be able to support you. And I also, once we get past that point, I also want to talk about if one wanted to become an employee. We didn't really dwell upon that
Absolutely. We'll get back
earlier.
to that. So in terms of becoming a member, we make it very easy on people. They can go to the website, zoonewengland.org, and you'll see a member tab, and it's as easy as just signing up online. Or you can download a form and send it in, or you can come to the zoo and buy it. And in fact, if you come to the zoo and buy admission, within the next week, if you can apply that against your membership price. So we make it easy for people. And then they get all the news of all the things going on as well via email. But in order to donate to the zoo, we have probably 1,200 donors right now to our annual fund, and that's our operating support. And so people can do that again online, or there's contact numbers there to call. We love to have bequests. I just had the most wonderful bequest given. Unfortunately, I didn't even know the person had passed away, and her executor called me and said, this woman had worked with us up at the State House, and she was a legislative aide. I didn't know she had money. She's now providing a wonderful annual bequest to the zoo out of a trust that she created.
So tell one what you mentioned the website, and I know we had it up, and well, I can see, boy, that program director back there, he is something else.
He's crackerjack.
Oh, absolutely. He's just, I won't even put his name on it. He'd be blushing if I did that, so I won't even mention his name. But as you can see, they can go on the website, www.zoonewengland.org, and that's where they can get this information on membership and also support. Okay.
Yeah, so there's membership, there's support us. I don't want to leave without talking about how people get into the business.
Yes, please do.
Because I consider it an important part, and we've had a number of Stoughton kids come up and work through the business. I think that the first and foremost, and I think of the business primarily as animal care. Now, we do need people that may like animals, but they have other skills. So we need, as you just said, everything from fundraisers to membership specialists to admissions people to facilities guys that have technical expertise in repairing things and building things. We need a horticultural team. We're hiring horticultural people. So there are, we have educators, obviously, quite a few educators. So any of those disciplines, and in fact more. We have PR and marketing, and actually have a full-time social media person. So communications in this day and age are changing, but there are lots of different opportunities to enter the zoo. I always think of the way I came in through animal care, and many people think of the zoo that way. And the most important thing there is it's incredibly competitive to get into this field. A lot of people want to do it, yet it pays poorly. So go into it with, and I knew it going in, but I figured I'd follow my passion, and knew I'd never make much money as a wildlife major in college, but I knew I'd be happy. And I have to admit, I just hit 37 years at the zoo.
Wow.
I love going into work every morning, and my wife has to drag me out every night because I've got so many things going, and I'm so excited about the progress we're making. But the key with getting into animal care in particular is to get experience. Almost every zookeeper now has at least a bachelor's degree in a related field: biology, animal behavior, zoology, wildlife. But then you've got to get experience, and that can be really competitive, and look for internship possibilities. But the problem is that most of those internships are unpaid. So if you can work, our internship requires 400 hours. That's basically working all summer with no pay unless you work in the evening for pay. So it's a challenge, and as I said, we've got some scholarships now that we can give to needy young people, and we're trying to make the animal care ranks more diverse as well at the same time.
Well, let me ask you about this. What would be, if one wanted to volunteer?
Oh, that's another great, thank you.
What's the, if one says, okay, I have some time. No, I know nothing about animals.
Yeah.
I know nothing about, but I suspect that you have people that take tickets. I suspect that you have people that do, cleaning up,
Well,
maintenance. You got a lot of things. So
primarily the people who volunteer are going to be educators. They're going to be docents. So they may have to learn. They may not have the background. We do occasionally have technicians that volunteer, even unions that come in and do some volunteer work. For the most part, we don't have volunteers working with cash handling, and we don't ever put volunteers in harm's way with the animals. So sometimes in children's zoo, for example, they can be helping kids to meet the hands-on the petting zoo animals, and that's a great, we have some people who've done great at that, but we have retirees and we have young people that volunteer, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's a really growing area for us, and they're a key link to our visitors, because once a volunteer gets well educated, they can really convey a lot of information and enthusiasm and share some of that conservation work. We just got to touch on it today, but there are so many great conservation stories, so many great stories about each individual animal, like Little Joe, but like every animal like that has its own background history and story that people get excited to hear, and when they're pregnant and when they're in with their offspring. So there's so many stories to tell and learn. And ultimately what the zoo is all about is really inspiring people to want to save this natural beauty that we share the world with. And that's what we're all in it for. We want people to change their behavior, to support conservation, to make decisions that help us to preserve the natural history that we all share here on the planet. And I'm more excited than ever that we're really achieving that to an ever higher level.
let me, before we're coming to the close very shortly, but I'm going to think parochially. I'm a senior, and so what are the opportunities that some seniors could provide? Some oftentimes they have time. They have ways of finding interest. I know that at least in and around both of your zoos, there are many senior facilities. Has there been any connection been made there, John?
And we've been pulling them in to volunteer. We have a lot of retired teachers and that sort of thing that are really great at volunteering and conveying this information. But I think you touched on something else that I've been working on is we have a growing senior community. And sometimes the zoo is too much for them to walk that whole way. So we're coming up with ways for them where we help them to overcome that long distance travel. So seniors are they also get a discount. And so
I like those. Listen, I like that. That rings volumes to my ears. But you know what I like to do is, I know we've talked about a lot, but I know we have a few more videos. And maybe we'll see how the time goes, but why don't we show folks a little bit more about exactly what happens at the zoo. So if we can bring up some of the videos, and I know that you can't talk over them, but talk over them anyhow. At least you educate me.
This is something I'm really excited about. These are bush dog pups that weren't born very long ago. That's the mother, and this is a small wild dog from Central America, and it's in that Caribbean coast exhibit. And there they are carrying their baby. Now the dad would we gave them multiple nest boxes so they could move the cubs to feel comfortable. Dad would move them to one nest box. The mother would move them back to where they were. She didn't interfere with him. But they are now they're running around, and just a fascinating and rare animal that needs conservation work. It's one that we're the first ones to breed it here in New England. There's the snow leopard cubs. They're making, out in that last snow that got icy, they're just climbing up the hill and sliding down, just having a blast. They have claws. They could dig right in if they want to. There are so many aspects to the zoo, and so many different, we get great support from the veterinary community in Eastern Mass. The snow leopard cubs with the nest camera again. That's when they were just born. Shortly before that, they're nursing on their mom. And there they are out in the exhibit playing. This is before it got too cool. just nonstop, and their poor mother has to have so much patience because they just attack her constantly. They stalk up on her. There it is stalking. I don't know what it's stalking, but either its mother or its sister probably. But they just instinctive hunters, and you see it. They're also instinctive at climbing up rocks. They can get up those rocks. This exhibit is like real natural snow leopard habitat, and you can see the way they go up there. There's the mother giving them a bath, and they're just incredible athletes. Unfortunately, snow leopards are threatened and are killed extensively for their fur and also in retribution. So we're supporting the Snow Leopard Trust, who works in all throughout Central Asia to save this species, and they're very effective. We have a collaborative meeting coming up with them shortly. We've got an MOU. We're working with them for the next 3 years, along with other species and groups that are working on particular species. But snow leopards are a magical species. They really inspire people. And we've had some incredible young people who have gone on to develop very successful conservation careers. Some of them are teaching in colleges. Some of them are teaching in the Boston Public Schools. So it's this is about preparing gorilla diets. And as I said earlier, they're vegetarians. There's a lot of chopping, a lot of greens, and they eat a lot of volume.
Okay.
But their health is a primary consideration, and as I said, they're trained, especially the males, for us to be able to do those cardiac ultrasounds. Literally, we put the gel with no anesthesia. They hold their chest up for us, and we put the gel on and the probe, and we're able to see their heart health.
And that's what's interesting. I mean, I think a lot of people would think that they are carnivores
Right.
and not in terms of vegetarians. I mean,
Yes.
it's just interesting what you think, because when they normally show a gorilla,
Yeah.
they show them in a wild state, and you presume that
would
they
think, yeah.
that they are carnivores.
They are almost 100% vegetarians, and would, maybe they'd eat an egg if they found it, something like that.
Yeah. Well, John, we're coming to the close of the program. This has definitely been educational and exciting. I wish you all the best. I want to bring up once again just the information how people can contact you if we can, but if not, why don't you tell them what
Sure.
is the website that they can look at to provide the support?
www.zoonewengland.org. Very easy, or you can do franklinparkzoo.org. We make it easy, or stonezoo.org. So that people can find their way into our website very easily. We would love for people to volunteer. We would love for them to become members. We would love for people to become donors. And last but not least, just visit the zoo. If you haven't been there, it's your loss. You really have to see the magic that we do there.
And I would agree. I couldn't agree more that it is. I want you to wish Joe a happy 25th birthday. He is infamous in the city of Boston, and I'm sure that he is at the zoo as well. So want to thank you again for joining me today. Wish you all the best, much success, and I'm going to have to renew my membership. I think my membership may be outdated at the present time, so I'm going to do that, and I invite all of you to do so as well. Have a blessed day.
Thank you. That was great.